Condoleezza Rice delivers a truth bomb condemning critical race theory to the harridans of The View. Said hags snarl and bark while Whoopi has an epiphany that has nothing at all to do with her ridiculous name. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show cheering on Condoleezza Rice. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. As you know, we are that program. The only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Before we start today, I do want to give a shout out to our newest sponsor. It's called Clean Start. It is a hand sanitizer that is incredible. It's odor-free, number one. It delivers itself in a foam pump as opposed to a kind of a gel. It lasts for 2 hours, the benefits of this, in terms of its bacterial killing qualities. And the best part is you can refill these bottles individually when you buy a bulk order from Clean Start. We really urge you to do this. There's no alcohol in this at all. It works for 2 hours to kill that bacteria. I've never seen one quite as likable as this, and it doesn't have any odor to it either, so it's also completely non-invasive in that way. So all you got to do is go to freedomproject.com/clean, K-L-E-E-N. That's K-L-E-E-N. Okay, today we start with former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice as she eloquently calls out critical race theory on The View in front of millions of people and a really brainwashed studio audience.
Well, I was a teacher, and there is a curriculum that teachers follow, and it's studied by supposedly experts. I have a lot of education credits because you learn how to teach and you learn your subject. So you can't really pit that up against a parent who just is annoyed that you're teaching, To Kill a Mockingbird or whatever the curriculum says. You can't have the parents interfering to that extent in the curriculum. But it's nice to hear from them. But if they are adamant and they don't want you to teach what is going to be taught, period, they're going to have to homeschool their kids because this is not going to wash.
Well, they're actually homeschooling them in increasing numbers. And I think that's a signal. First of all, parents ought to be involved in their children's education. But if I could take a moment to talk about the whole issue of critical race theory and what is and is not being taught. I come out of an academic institution, and this is something that academics debate, what is the role of race and so forth. And let me be very clear. I grew up in segregated Birmingham, Alabama. I couldn't go to a movie theater or to a restaurant with my parents. I went to segregated schools till we moved to Denver. My parents never thought I was going to grow up in a world without prejudice, but they also told me that's somebody else's problem, not yours. You're going to overcome it, and you are going to be anything you want to be. And that's the message that I think we ought to be sending to kids. One of the worries that I have about the way that we're talking about race is that it either seems so big that somehow white people now have to feel guilty for everything that happened in the past. I don't think that's very productive. Or black people have to feel disempowered by race. I would like black kids to be completely empowered, to know that they are beautiful in their blackness. But in order to do that, I don't have to make white kids feel bad for being white.
All right, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yes, there is.
But my first, second, third, fourth reaction, whatever it may be, is that if you caught the audience participation there with the applause, when Joy Behar said, that's the way it's going to be, parents, they're going to teach it, we get a big applause. Okay. But when Condoleezza Rice says you can be anything you want to be about what she was told and encouraging others, it's like a wait.
Barely any.
Okay, I guess I'll applaud. That sums up the entire interview.
And when Condoleezza Rice says white kids should not be made to feel guilty about things that happened in the past, silence.
Crickets.
Absolute silence. The other way, I approached it from another way. Wanted to ask you about this. You were trained as a teacher, right?
Oh, Joy's.
Yeah, explain, Joy, the ignorance of Joy Behar's ignorant comment at the beginning of that
Joy
clip.
Behar was an educator for a few years back in the early 80s. Dr. Duke, do you know what she taught?
English back in the 1880s, right?
Yes, that's when it was. Of course, she was an English teacher.
Yes.
Can you imagine, she said.
Can you imagine being in that class every day?
Oh, no. Anyway, it took her a moment to be like, To Kill a Mockingbird. Tells you how much she really focused on literature. The fact that she had to claim well, I'm highly educated because I took all these courses about, they taught us how to teach.
They taught us how to teach. That's what I was wondering. Yeah,
and
explain
what she's trying to do there clearly is to elevate herself and make her seem like she's more important than she is. She's not. Because in those classes, even back then, they don't teach you how to teach the subject. They teach you how to teach what they want you to teach. And Joy basically then did say, well, there's a curriculum to follow. It's not me coming up with any of this. I am told what to teach and basically how to teach it. And if I stray from that, then I'm not teaching to the way they want. And that's what the real story is with her.
What was so transparent about what she said, how behind the time she is. That's the problem, right?
Oh, that's a problem, yeah.
To Kill a Mockingbird. All these moms are protesting To Kill a Mockingbird. No, the left has removed To Kill a Mockingbird from the curriculum because it has that dreaded N-word in it, right?
Correct. Fact
so
check, true.
Even when she gives you her example, she's completely off her rocker. Moms and dads aren't complaining about the teaching of history. This is the other thing that was said that drove me nuts. No one is saying that as some of the other members of The View, we have a clip on this, right? Sunny Hostin, who may be the shallowest of all that shallowicity, just invented a word, of all the shallowicity we see on The View, she's probably she's spread the thinnest, right? And so she actually makes this argument, which we'll see it here in a second, that we don't want to teach the history of race. We don't want to teach the history of slavery. Got news for you, Sonny. They teach that at the expense of everything else. Take a look at the clip.
There's been this sort of rollback of history. People want to hide history.
Oh, I don't.
And,
Come
yes, that is true.
About 45 seconds, guys.
And what we are seeing is this rollback of history. Parents don't want children to hear about the real history. And when we teach children about the real history, I think that is when we will really have true racial reconciliation.
People are being taught the true history. But I just have to say one more thing. It goes back to how we teach the history.
That's what I'm saying.
We teach the good and we teach the bad of history.
Yeah,
but what we don't do is make 7- and 10-year-olds feel that they are somehow bad people because of the color of their skin. We've been through that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we don't need to do that again.
We don't want
for
anybody
anyone.
to feel that.
Precisely.
That's the idea.
That doesn't seem to be part of the plan.
Oh, it is part of the plan.
I mean,
I'm
in
sorry.
Germany, they teach the Holocaust to every student.
Of course.
I met a German girl
and
one
we teach
time,
slavery to every student.
I met a German once, and they talked about things. Joy Behar trying to get back in there, and clearly she doesn't know what she's
And
talking
the
about.
thing that I am troubled by, let's teach the real history of African Americans. How about that? How about we teach that? I'll absolutely talk about what happened 200 years ago. Absolutely dwell on the evils of slavery. Let's talk about the modern day African American. Let's talk about murder rates among African Americans, killing other African Americans. Let's talk about dropout rates and divorce rates and abortion rates. Let's talk about the absolute history of the African American people in this country over the last 200 years, and start with the horrors of slavery, but fast forward to today and look at all that opportunity squandered. Sonny, are you willing to talk about that as frankly as you are everything else?
Hit the brakes. Before we move on, just a quick reminder that the best way to access our content is to download our Freedom Project Media app. Simply search Freedom Project in your app store, and then make sure you allow for notifications once you download. Also, if you like listening to the audio podcast, we are available on Apple, Google, SoundCloud, and everywhere else. So, turns out, Loudoun County School Board, if you haven't been tuning into the Dr. Duke Show lately, well, you've missed every time when we talk about the Loudoun County School Board because it's almost daily.
It's almost Loudoun County all the time on the Dr. Duke Show.
It's loud on Dr. Duke talking about Loudoun County. The school board, if you haven't known the whole story, I'll get to in a moment. But they did know. The big news is they did know exactly that there was an alleged sexual assault occurring on May 28th in a girl's bathroom at Stonebridge High School. And if, again, you missed our coverage from it, we talked about, it was a story of a freshman girl who was allegedly raped in the bathroom by a boy, at the time 14-year-old, now 15-year-old boy, who likes to wear skirts. And somehow that makes it so he can go into the girl's bathroom. something like that. And at the time, Superintendent Scott Ziegler had claimed at a school board meeting in June that all of last year that there had not been a sexual assault, but there was one. And then the rape victim's father was at the meeting. Things got out of hand, we'll say. He got arrested. And then basically all of it is Loudoun County is trying to kind of cover up what happened. And then there just a couple weeks ago was another sexual assault by the same boy at a different school, because this time he, even though he had an ankle bracelet on and was under surveillance, he put allegedly a girl in a classroom and forced himself on her. So Loudoun County, the school, trying to just be like, we don't know. But we got evidence now via email that the school board was informed of that sexual assault on May 28th. Let's take a look at said email. It says, "Good afternoon, board members." This is coming again from Scott Ziegler. "The purpose of this email is to provide you with information regarding an incident that occurred at Stonebridge High School. This afternoon, a female student alleged that a male student sexually assaulted her in the restroom. The LCSO is investigating the matter. Secondary to the assault investigation, the female student's parent responded to the school." Again, this is Scott Smith, the dad, not to be confused with Scott Ziegler, the superintendent. So Smith, the dad, went to the school, as we reported last week, and so the parent responded to the school and caused a disruption by threatening and profane language that was overheard by staff and students. Additional law enforcement units responded to the school to assist with the parent. So the dad came to the school, as we reported, and was upset when he found out that his daughter was allegedly raped, and because dad got mad, they had to call in. That's when the security got there. And dad got
dragged out in handcuffs.
But let's look at that letter just one more time here. The school's counseling team is providing services for students who witnessed dad's behavior. The alleged victim is being tended by the LCSO. And LCSO is investigating both incidents. Further updates may not be available. Again, you see the date on that? May 28th.
Yeah, and so this is shocking. The entire school board knew about call them alleged rapes all you want, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of evidence that they didn't take place. The kid was in an ankle bracelet, for God's sake. They transferred him out of his school. And what's really shocking about this, too, is this wasn't even a kid who necessarily identified as a transgender. He was just a boy who was fond of wearing skirts. And one wonders if he wore anything under the skirt. My inclination is to think probably not. And so they let this kid into the girls' bathroom. I think about that. So concerned were they about the rights of transgender children that this kid who wanted to wear a skirt meandered into the girls' bathroom. Nobody thought this was a bad idea. Nobody thought that we should draw any kind of a line or boundary. Once one declares what they are, or they believe to be, they ought to be able to go wherever they want. And to cover up not just one but two rapes is an unbelievable testimony to how bad political correctness has got. You're less concerned about the welfare and the protection of a young girl in her own bathroom than you are how it will look if we out this kid, if we bring this information to the public. We call the authorities. To do that is going to cast an aspersion over the image of LGBTQ people. And so there, we got to weigh the ramifications of rape with making people perhaps have a slightly lower view of transgendered people. We're not going to make that. The little girl's on her own. Her father's dragged off in chains. That's the end of that. We've made our commitment. We're standing by boys in skirts raping girls as part of the all-new. It's part of one of those prices you got to pay for the new tolerance and understanding.
Well, as we know, Dr. Scott Ziegler is so sorry. He said last week. "First, let me say to the families and students involved, my heart aches for you. And I am sorry that we failed to provide the safe, welcoming, and affirming environment that we aspire to provide. We acknowledge and share your pain, and we will continue to offer you support to help your families through this trauma." Now, in previous remarks, the same Scott Ziegler basically said, well, it was a lack of oversight that existed prior to my tenure. And so I said, well, when did your tenure begin, Mr. Ziegler? It on the website for Loudoun County. It says Dr. Scott A. Ziegler was appointed the superintendent for Loudoun County Public Schools on June 8th, 2021. So you're like, okay, yeah, that happened before. But he has served as LCPS's interim superintendent since January 1, when he was appointed to succeed Dr. Eric Williams. And Dr. Ziegler joined the staff there as assistant superintendent for human resources and talent development in December of 2019, which tells everyone that he is just speaking out of both ends right now, because he clearly was in charge when all of this happened and has been there for several years.
And why do any of them have jobs? That one really progressive liberal, that very progressive school board member, she stepped aside. And yet nobody else has resigned yet from that school board, and Ziegler still has his job. I guess we're going to have to refer to this as Ziegler's Follies, right? What else could we say about this? Just to reiterate again, Loudoun County School, this is the mindset of progressives. They're more concerned about the reputation of their LGBTQ clientele than they are the physical safety of your children, period.
So, we have someone who is less than 1/10/24 Native American who decided to put on some feathers in a math class and chant and dance in a math class. So, we'll watch the video and then we'll explain.
Soka-toa, 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 soka, 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 soka. Water goddess, again, I ask you, please tell me the secret Indian chant.
Okay, so in Riverside, California, at the John W. North High School, that was math teacher Candace Reed.
Was.
Still her. And she decided to she upped the ante on cringe factor with what teachers are doing on the, it gets out to be, I guess, on the social media, on the TikToks and whatnot. So she was trying, apparently, in her trigonometry class to help with kids remember SOHCAHTOA. It's a mnemonic device. SOHCAHTOA. It's trig, function, sine, cosine, tangent. Dr. Duke doesn't know any of this because he doesn't know math.
I absolutely remember. I did take I got C, I think, but I did take trigonometry. Did you take trig?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before calculus.
Perhaps
Perhaps
the only thing I remember from trigonometry was SOHCAHTOA. Yeah.
So here's the thing. So if you wanted to learn sine, S equals opposite over hypotenuse, and so the O and the H. Anyway, SOHCAHTOA, it works for sine, cosine, tangent. I remember the day we learned SOHCAHTOA. Guess what my teacher said? Hey, here's a mnemonic device, SOHCAHTOA. Here's what it means. And I'm like, oh, cool, SOHCAHTOA. That was it. No chanting.
No.
He did not chant. He did not dance. He did not woo or whatever the heck she was just doing.
What was really, really, really hard to watch is that not one kid was laughing. Not one kid was smiling.
No,
they had their heads on the desk. They looked like they were traumatized. I mean, you got to know your audience. As teachers, we've all made jokes or had witticisms that just clunk.
Maybe
right?
you have. You
they
probably
clunk.
have that.
You've had them too. I know you well enough to know. Every now and then you throw a clunker out there, but you got to know your audience, right? You kind of do that the old Johnny Carson, ooh, stinko, and you move on. She just kept on dancing, for God's sake.
You know why? It's because she's been doing this forever. It's 2021, but apparently is at least back to a 2012 yearbook. One social media user actually put up the picture because she went to that school. She says she didn't have her as a teacher, but she went to the yearbook. It was printed in the yearbook. And it even says that, like, she does this. It says, I find that if I tell them, and she's talking about her students here, tell them a story using math along the way, it's like a memory device. it just may stick with them forever.
Well,
this has been stuck with her forever now
Yeah.
because she is, at least for now, is suspended or put on leave or however you want to say it, but she's not in the classroom at this very moment.
Well, look, I mean, on one hand, you got to do what you got to do to wake kids up. I have done my share of stupid things in front of the classroom.
Like what?
Do you remember? Did I do anything stupid when I was your teacher?
You did something very, very embarrassing.
What was that?
Do you want me to tell?
Yeah, why not?
Dr. Duke had a pants issue
I did,
one day
yes.
before our class where there was a tear. And thankfully,
Yeah.
he stood behind the desk the entire time.
So I had a pair of Levi's on, and they were a really old pair. And it had a weird. So I was walking up the stairs, and I turned weird, and all of a sudden, from the knee up, it kind of opened up a slit. And so I've got to go teach, right? I'm not going to cancel class. I'm going on regardless. And so I'm not canceling my class. And so, but I kind of hid behind the podium the whole time. But yeah, I mean, it was dicey for a while. It was dicey. But returning to our Indian, our Lizzie Warren fake Indian, I could even live with Sokotoa. I mean, the chant does have a certain Native American cadence,
well, you
right?
could say Sokotoa.
If all she did was put on the headdress and say that and be done with it, I would even be able to argue. You could make an argument that it's a legitimate teaching device. I mean, I'm not buying this because you wear a headdress. Every Native American across the country is fainting into fainting couches. I think it's complete BS. In the same way that when somebody wearing an obi and a kimono for Halloween, no one in Japan is angry by that. Period. It's nonsense. All this cultural appropriation is complete unmitigated bullcrap. Having said that, the dance, I mean, the running up and down the aisles, I mean, you got to know your audience. It's the first mark of a high-level comedian to be able to read your audience. And as a teacher, if you're not reading your audience, what makes a good teacher from a bad teacher, among other things, is they have ability to read the kids. They can see if kids aren't getting it. They can see if kids are tuned in, tuned out. They can see what kind of things are working and do more of that. For a woman who's been teaching a long time, what an absolute and complete lack of awareness about how your own audience is handling things. Time again for instant classics. We've been looking at Gustave Doré, the great wood engraver. There he is right there. He was born in 1832. He died in 1883. And he is probably the preeminent wood engraver in maybe the history of the world. He was commissioned to do all sorts of engravings for the major masterpieces of Western culture, among them Milton and Dante and Balzac and Rabelais and Cervantes. So he really had commissions, well-paying commissions, to produce this beautiful art based on the higher works of classical literature. Take a look at his Bible series. We looked at yesterday an Old Testament wood carving, engraving, and we're going to look at one from the New Testament now from his Bible series, which was finally released in 1866. And there is Christ, and there is the devil. And this is one of the most moving scenes from the Bible from my perspective. It is after Jesus was baptized. One of the very first things that happened to him after his baptism is the devil came and swept him into the wilderness. And Jesus had fasted, the Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit, took him to the wilderness. For 40 days and 40 nights, Jesus fasted until his human body was physically weak and at the point of collapse. And only at that moment did the devil come to tempt him. And this is the third and the most dangerous of the temptations. There is the devil showing Jesus all the kingdoms of the world and all the glory of them, at which point the devil said to Jesus, "All these I will give unto you if you just bow and worship me." All right, this is the temptation. Who is God, the Father or this malignant spirit? And the Son knows all too well, despite his delirium, despite the weakness of his physical body, Christ knows all too well who is the Father, and he rejects with impunity, he rejects the call of Satan. He says, "Begone, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shouldst thou serve." A lesson that if Satan had remembered there never would have been a fall of man or a fall of the angels in heaven. And it's kind of a beautiful image, a beautiful wood carving here. You can see the breadth of the kingdom of Satan. And this is the important point of the story. All worldly pomp, all worldly circumstance, all worldly grandeur is ultimately a trick of the devil's. It is nothing meaningful. That kind of materialist glory belongs to Satan, not to God. And to reject that is what we are all called to do as Christians.
Okay, those are the stories for today. If you have a question for us, please feel free to drop it into the mailbag by emailing askduke@fpeusa.org. And if you enjoy our content, please support our show by joining the Patriot Club. Your tax-deductible donation keeps us going. Simply visit patriotclub.us to get signed up. That's patriotclub.us. And as a special thank you, we will ship you a brand new American Patriot Templar.
And that wraps up the show for Freedom Project. I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated.